Welcome to Dunwoody Mechanical Engineering. This is a video lecture for ENGR1221 Circuits and Automation. Today we'll be talking about PLC HMIs and VFDs. So just a reminder where we've been. We've talked over several ladder logic examples over the last week or two. We talked about bits, holding circuits, latches, timers, counters, math instructions, compare. Today we're going to take some time talking about HMIs, and then in a separate video I'll break it up and do some on variable frequency drives or VFDs. So what is a human-machine interface? Well, in short, it's how people interact with the equipment. It could be the grip of your pen, right? What makes this an enjoyable experience to use or not. Maybe you have a cheap Bic pen and you don't like using that pen. Could be operating a piece of equipment like a machine shop mill, right? You have handles and switches. How do you adjust the speed? Those kinds of things. Could be using a computer, right? The keyboard and mouse versus a trackpad. What are the different ways that you interface with that machine? Could be the buttons and knobs on an oscilloscope. So anytime you're interacting with a piece of equipment, you are using some human-machine interface. When we talk about PLCs, this is more to mean a screen that either provides information to the user or takes input from the user to work through providing instruction or changes to the PLC itself. So it might give some input, might display an output. Here's an example of a screen. Let's flip over to that guy, and I should be able to get that. There we are. Running in a shot. And a new piece of material. A bit loud, I'll turn that down. And I'll show you the PLC in a second. Very loud hydraulic press. There's the PLC, the HMI and the PLC. So the screen was a HMI, the PLC was in that container, and you can see how that, let me just back up for a moment to that point here. Here we are, right? So there is the screen. So there's some physical buttons here. That's part of the HMI, but when we're talking PLCs, we're mostly talking this HMI screen itself. So there's various inputs and displays on here. It looks like this is not an American company, so there's some other characters on there, but you get the idea of what's going on with that screen. So coming back to the presentation. So there's in the slides, you can click this link. It takes you to a PDF, but they're looking at human-machine interface design. So what process goes into making that interface for users to use. This is from a number of years back, but still hands useful information here. So good design characteristics, good contrast. Things that are different should look very different, right? So a stop button and a start button shouldn't look anything super close to each other, right? One's probably red and one's probably green. Repetition, each screen should look similar to each other, but it's not like jarring when you navigate to a different screen. Should be some reasonable alignment, not just a hodgepodge of materials on there, and grouping things together that belong together and things that don't belong together should not be together, right? So that you can read through more of that if you'd like. As we get into it here, we'll do a demo in a minute. So what can we do with an HMI? I mentioned earlier we can provide input to a PLC, so this could be like a button. We could have some jogging, right? So there's a YouTube video link there if you'd like to look at that. It's a little bit more about jogging circuits, right? So that by jogging I mean moving a motor or actuator a slight bit to get it into a correct position. You're not just turning it on or off completely. Display output or status from a PLC, so that's providing input user information. And we could stack navigate things together. We could take numeric input or output on that. So we could relate these different screens together to make it more useful for the user. With an HMI, the PLC programming is still done in ladder using something like Studio 5000. We still define the tags and bits and things. The HMI will be mapped to some of those tags. So we'll set up tags in the HMI and the PLC, and they have to agree with each other. We can use those to toggle those bits or provide those values into the PLC program. Now the HMI array and display, etc., is all done in a separate type of project. For our PLCs, that's in the same program. It's still in Studio 5000, only we call it, I think it's a view project instead of a programming project. We'll be doing this panel view 5310. You can do other different ones, right? There's different sizes of these, there's different models inside of here. So inside of a new project, instead of doing logics, we're going to do view, and then we'll name that something, right? So this could be a first HMI project or something of that sort. I'll show you an emulator in just a moment. I'll probably break the video here and go to that, but it's going to be pretty similar to what you do in lab. It may not be the exact same panel, but you'll get the idea as we work through it. So we can, like I said before, we can map some buttons, toggle things on, show a display, provide numeric input, show some text, etc., navigate different screens. It's kind of like a graphical user interface for a computer program or an app, right? So you want to make this useful for the user. Things should be pretty intuitive. And now we'll pause here and we'll take a look at how this works as we go through it. We can also pull some tag values from the PLC. We want to display those, and we'll walk through setting bits or changing states on the HMI itself. And one thing to keep in mind as we're working with HMIs is this is for the user of that piece of equipment, so they shouldn't necessarily need to be the person programming the PLC or knowing how to program a PLC, but they should be able to interact with the PLC and change anything that they need to do the operations using the HMI and PLC program. So you want to make it as easy as possible for that person, right? They should be able to have it fairly intuitive, know where buttons are, know how to change inputs or outputs, and work from there. So at this point I'm going to pause. We'll work through these examples. We'll do a push button, an indicator, navigating different screens. I don't have an analog value here, so I probably will not do the graph, but it's not too hard to do there. So we'll pause here on this video. I'll start a new video where we get into the HMI programming itself.